It's interesting because for me, the challenge wasn't, it was such a personal writing. And the challenge was like more this personal, is this good enough? This came from me. Do I really have the right to put this out? Why would it was like more of an emotional worthiness rather than this was so personal. I knew as soon as I wrote it, it was for everyone. Like I was looking at it like I need to be doing this. And I knew at that point in time I wasn't doing it. So it sort of started me on a trajectory of really evaluating the words that I'm giving out to others. Am I living this? Am I an example of this? Like I need to start really, walking the walk before anything that I say is going to, hit a home run. So I don't think I doubted the personal aspect of it because that's for me what gets through. If I read something that's not personal or doesn't make me feel something, what's the point really, So, but yeah, getting past the, is this good enough kind of part of the journey, I think was a challenge for me, which is why I chose self-publishing because I was so sort of emotionally questioning the validity of myself as a human and what I was creating that I wasn't prepared to deal with rejection. I was like, I'm going to do this come hell or high water. So.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have a great guest with me on today. Trish is on today, and we're going to be talking about her author journey, some amazing stuff. And what I love about my guest today is she wrote books to her children. And I love the idea of doing that in something very personal that you can share with your family and how that was an inspiration for Trish. But welcome, Trish, to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So the website, trishmichael.com, everyone can go there. We'll have links in the show notes. Beautiful website, by the way. And when chatting about this before we hit record, I love a great website that kind of brings me in right from the beginning, and you just feel like you're in a good place when you start with a website. So I love it. Can you tell me a little bit behind the scenes of your website? And is this something that you created yourself? Did you have help with this? It's beautiful.
Well, I actually am involved in marketing and website building for other businesses. So it is something that I'm pretty good at. And I am happy to hear that mine is working because sometimes it's hard to do that for yourself. Like it's hard to write your own bio. It's hard to like look at yourself and present it, and know if you're doing the right thing. So thank you for that.
Okay, so that's a great place to start. And I'm glad you brought that up. So as a new author, you're looking for ways to promote your book, to get out there beyond podcasts, which is great to have you here. But as far as a website, some of the authors that I talk to don't feel it's necessary at the beginning stages. What are your thoughts around a website tied to your book as an author?
Well, I think it'll be different for everyone, but I do think that the one most important thing that I've taken away, and of course it's a different journey for everyone, especially in self-publishing. But for me, it was kind of thrust upon me that my platform was the most important thing, like letting people know who I am, letting people know what my story is. And what better way to do that than a website? It's like really inexpensive. Yeah. And you have complete control of the narrative. So you can present yourself the way that you want to be seen. And for me, that is especially important because my books don't necessarily speak of what I had to go through to get to this point of sharing positivity and light and trying to help people. So my website kind of helps people to understand where I came from and what I'm doing with it. And I don't know how you can do that without one, really.
Any tips for somebody with a new website? Some things you must have, and maybe some things you probably not quite as important on your website.
Must have your contact information. You'd be surprised how many people leave that off. Telephone, email, just a way for people to get in contact with you because that's how you're going to get your book out there. So make sure people know who you are and how to get in touch.
Anything we should probably stay away from on your website? Any tips on that as well?
I'm a firm believer in polarizing. My whole photography business was very much built on having a polarizing presence. So not everyone's going to love me but the people who connect are the right ones. And so I don't think that you should ever be afraid that you're going to do the wrong thing. Just try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, learn.
I love it. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, because I think that it's nice to be found online. It's one thing to go on a podcast and people to find you that way, but when you put all your trust in a social media app, who could be here today and gone tomorrow, it's there. People
Right.
talk about it being rented land. You don't really own it. A
Yeah.
website you own. This is you. So you can send people here in the future, and no matter what happens on whatever platform you're on, external to your website, there's
Right.
always a home plate, a home base for people to find you. So it's
And it
great.
really does add legitimacy, even though it shouldn't. Like anyone can have a website, but like because anyone can have a website, if you don't, people question why. So I do think it's something that has more opportunity in it than it does anything bad. So definitely go for it.
Excellent. So we had a chance to talk previously, and we talked through some of the writings that you've been doing. And as we talked in the opening, you've written 3 books originally directed towards your children. And I love the idea of the thought behind why you did that and the message you had for your kids in doing so. Can you kind of talk us through these 3 books? And in your mind, did you plan on writing the 3 books at the same time, like as a group, or did it just sort of happen that each of the books became one for each of the 3 children?
So the first one was written, gosh, probably 11 or 12 years ago now.
Wow.
And it was just literally written to my child. It wasn't a book. It wasn't anything. It was me in a very desperate place trying to get through to someone who I loved dearly. And I was trying, or I felt as though I had been trying everything. And so this was almost like, well, I haven't tried writing anything in rhyme. And that it wasn't really actually a thought. It just kind of plunked in and flowed out of me. And I sent it to her because it was really important for me to try and continue to impart these messages. So I didn't write everything in a group. In fact, that sat for a long time and I didn't share it with anyone but her until a couple years ago. But I knew once I wrote it that it was something special and that it was something that I would eventually share when I was ready. I don't think I realized it would be a book, though it seems so obvious now. So that first book, Find Your Happy, was sort of like my love note to her to get her to understand that you can be happy no matter what. Like things are going to happen and you can't do anything about that, but you can do something about this, like your thoughts, your choices, all of these things that she wasn't really taking responsibility for at the time. And the result was a really miserable existence. All of these things you have control over. And once you own that, your whole life turns around. I think the irony in that was I wrote it at a time that I wasn't living that. So it's no surprise that it didn't get through at that point in time. So that was Find Your Happy. And as I said, it was only a couple of years ago that I actually read it out loud to someone. And it was like, this is special. You need to do something with this. And within like a month, I had signed with I had an editor and I was going through a small publisher, which it didn't end up working out with them. But yeah, the path had started to get this published.
So for Find Your Happy, like for something that's deeply personal, written specifically to one person, does it feel a little unnerving then to put this out into the world? And because it's not like you wrote it for the world, you wrote it for one person. So take me through that kind of thought pattern as you considered sharing this with the world.
It's interesting because for me, the challenge wasn't, it was such a personal writing. And the challenge was like more this personal, is this good enough? This came from me. Do I really have the right to put this out? Why would it was like more of an emotional worthiness rather than this was so personal. I knew as soon as I wrote it, it was for everyone. Like I was looking at it like I need to be doing this. And I knew at that point in time I wasn't doing it. So it sort of started me on a trajectory of really evaluating the words that I'm giving out to others. Am I living this? Am I an example of this? Like, I need to start really, walking the walk before anything that I say is going to, hit a home run. So I don't think I doubted the personal aspect of it, because that's for me what gets through. If I read something that's not personal or doesn't make me feel something, what's the point, really?
Yeah.
So but yeah, getting past the is this good enough kind of part of the journey, I think, was a challenge for me, which is why I chose self-publishing, because I was so sort of emotionally questioning the validity of myself as a human and what I was creating, that I wasn't prepared to deal with rejection. I was like, I'm going to do this come hell or high water. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's nice. And so for Find Your Happy, then, how, when you were writing it, did you realize you were writing it more for yourself too in that moment, or were you so focused on writing it for your child?
I really thought, everything that I was doing, I was just like, please let this work. Please let this work. I was so embroiled in the situation at hand that was really intense and not going in a direction that I wanted it to, that I knew it was special and I held it really dear. And I would get these hits every now and then where I was like, that's a really good piece of writing. You should maybe try to get that out there. But every time I would take a step in that direction, it never really panned out. And I kind of attribute that to me not being ready, because I wasn't embodying the messages in the book. But it was also, the book wasn't done. Like, the title Find Your Happy didn't happen until a rewrite during the editing process 2 years ago. So I realized that the book was a little too harsh. Like, reading through it, it was all true, but it was really sort of grinding in, you got to own this, you got to do this. But there was no evidence of the joy that happens after you do that. And so there was not a major rewrite. It was, I think, only that one stanza, even a couple of little tweaks, but the actual title Find Your Happy didn't land into it until 2 years ago. And that was the time when it was right. So, yeah.
It's interesting, because if had you released it as written early days, you might have it a little bit of a different feel, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love the time frames when I hear people talk about their books, specifically their first book, because it's taken a lifetime to get to the point of writing, right? And then all the books that come from there on seem to build on that foundation of that first book. So take me through the second book then. What was the time frame between book one and book two, as far as the writing period then?
So again, it was sort of this quite traumatic experience. And I oftentimes say that I need to be broken in order to receive. Like, I've been through a lot and I have a pretty hard shell, kind of come across as a lot tougher than I maybe am inside. And so these lovely things, these lovely creative things can't get in to be put on paper unless I'm pretty broken down. And so the second book, Light, was written 2021 for my son. And we have a little bit of a complicated situation. My ex-husband is not mentally well, and my son was challenged with this desire to connect with his dad and be able to look up to his dad and have a dad. And then the reality of some people can't be that. They just can't. And so we had to make some really difficult decisions, and I had to let him go and kind of learn that lesson on his own, which, as you can imagine, is a really hard thing to do when you know the damage that can be caused. So that book was kind of my way of reminding him of how your choices and the people around you impact you. This isn't just okay, I'll be fine. I can go and I can shove all this stuff under the rug and I'll be okay. It's just not how it works with toxic situations. They
Right.
impact you, and not only do they impact you, they impact everyone that loves you. And I think the biggest message with that particular book is that there is beauty in your choices, even when they're really hard and even when people don't understand why you're doing that, which is the space that I was in. I wasn't sure if he would understand that my letting him go was so that he would understand that you have to let people go. Sometimes that's the best thing to do. And in his case, it was so that he would come back of his own accord, having learned the lesson, not having any sort of idea about another human implanted in his brain, like sort of developing his own sense of what's right and wrong for him. And then there's this other aspect to it where it's like you inspire other people by following what's right for you. And they can either be angry at you or they can be inspired, and that's up to them. That has nothing to do with you.
Right.
So in dealing with toxic relationships, when it's people that are in your family, it can be quite challenging. And so this book, Light, kind of breaks it down to feelings instead of judgments and helps you to like make really hard decisions, but feel okay about it, which we all need.
Right.
I yet to come across a decision in my life that's been like, oh, that's obviously the amazing one. It's always like, well, I don't really know.
Yeah.
What should I do? So yeah, that's Light, the book for my son.
That's a hard point in time as far as making a decision to allow, him to go, and you wonder and worry a little bit about the impacts of what's going to happen.
Oh,
For me as a parent, I like having everyone under my roof so I can kind of, be that parent and be there for them. And as soon as they're outside of that comfort, safety of this house, right, I feel a little bit vulnerable as a parent. So if you don't really know what's
that was a mess.
Yeah.
That was, I think, for the time that he was there, I've never been worse off. Just because, you're connected to these people, and when they're not okay, you're not okay. So we are now all together in the same house. But that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't followed this sort of difficult path to get there. So it's written in rhyme. It's really lighthearted, but it covers kind of like pretty deep stuff that everyone sort of just needs a little reminder, like it's going to be okay. You can do this. It's all right. You can do hard things.
And that's maybe something I didn't clarify at the beginning, is these three books we're talking about, these first three, are children's books written for children, but really have a great impact for the parents reading them as well. So you've kind of addressed two things in one, which I love. So if you're looking for some great children's books for your family, there's some really great life lessons in here that really translate well, not just to kids, but to the adults that are reading them. So
I find that I'm often giving books to kids, and I'm like, make sure you read this with your mom, because the kid's fine. The kid knows all this stuff, but it's like, there's something about reading a children's book with your child. It's something that, number one, you do on repeat. A lot of times a book just becomes like a mantra. And so I know for me, one of those books was The Giving Tree, and what a horrible mantra to have. So I would love for kids and parents to be reading books together that are setting them up for success and that have messages that like empower them and make them feel good. And that's really what these books are hopefully set up to do.
I love it. So spend time reading with your children. That's a huge memory thing that they'll all keep with them for the rest of their life. And again, I love the fact that you say that these books are read more than once. And that's when your kids seem to gravitate to a book, there's a message or an image or something about the book that captured them, and they want it again. So as a parent reading those books, those messages start to sink into your own psyche as you go through the process. So well done. I love it. Book number 3 in the series of 3. Talk us through this one now as well.
So book number 3 was actually written as book number 4. So I do have 4 books written. The third one was written the day after Light. So I guess I was broken enough to let 2 in at once. And that one is hopefully going to be completed by the end of this year. I can't find an illustrator. It's driving me crazy. But anyhow, the Sorry Monster is the third book to be published. And that one was written for my youngest. So I've got 3 kids. And she well, I bestowed upon her my habit of saying sorry too much. I say sorry all the time. And it's in situations where it's not appropriate, like it's over the top. And so this was written after probably about 6 or 7 months of trying to impart different ways to break that habit. So first it was like, you can't say sorry, you have to say broccoli instead, because we're trying to set her up to understand, like, this is ridiculous. No one should say broccoli this much in a day. And then I think we have this thing in our household, 5 nice things. So if you say something unkind to yourself, you have to say 5 nice things to counter it. And so it's not her favorite thing to do. And so I was like, all right, fine. Now we're going to do 5 nice things every time you say sorry. And so then we went into that. And that didn't seem to break the habit either. And so this book came about on her birthday morning when she turned 12. And it basically personifies your inner child, which seems silly to do with a child, but my kids have had to grow up way too fast. And I feel like a lot of kids are in that situation, and a lot of adults had that situation. And it's basically this way of reminding you that you can hear you, like you can hear what you're saying. So you need to be really careful what you're saying out loud, what you're saying internally. Mm-hmm. And so in this particular case, this monster gets fed sorries, feeds on these sorries, and it makes him big and angry and heavy. And so she's carrying around this like heavy, heavy thing from feeling sorry all the time. And so it kind of walks through how there are other things that you can say. If you are relying on the word sorry all the time, perhaps you are stuck in a pattern of not valuing yourself, or perhaps you're stuck in a pattern of doing things that you know you're going to feel sorry about. Either way, if you start choosing your words more wisely, you can create a connection. Like, okay, we started saying, okay, what can we say instead of sorry? How about I'll do better next time? That's your replacement now. And that was put in place to help her to figure out, like, if I'll do better next time doesn't make sense, then the sorry didn't make sense.
Smart.
So you're saying it in a situation where you shouldn't say it. So trying to connect that. And so in the story, it just basically turns out that the monster isn't a monster. The monster just, his stomach hurts from sorries. So feed him love, feed him other words that like make him feel better are going to make you feel better. And they're going to make other people feel better too. So it kind of tries to cover all of those things, but in a really cute and lighthearted way. And she actually designed the monster. So she's very much a part of this book, not only the inspiration, but in the design as well.
What a great connection. What was the result of the book? Once it was all done and sitting on her nightstand by her bed, how did the book help her kind of navigate?
Well, as with anything, it's never just one thing, right?
Right.
And the book is, I'm running a Kickstarter, so it's in pre-order. I don't even have my proof in my hand yet. That's coming.
Wow. Okay, good.
Yeah. So, but there have been some major changes in her, and I would never attribute it to this book. I would never attribute it to any of the one things that we do. Everything that we do in our daily life is trying to embody these concepts and words, like do hard things, make hard decisions, make sure that you're feeling into it and it feels good to you. Your whole objective here on this planet is to feel good, and not in a way where you're like hurting other people, in a way where you're inspiring other people to also take good care of themselves and feel good. So all of these things these, all three of the books, they're very much like a part of our life. Like we live these, we talk about these things, we approach our lives in this way. And I think it's the combination of all of that and having things on repeat and being aware of the words that you're saying and being aware of the words you're consuming and the people that you allow in your space. All of these things over time have a tremendous impact just on your base level happiness. And like, I'm proof of that, like absolute proof of that, because I was in an abusive relationship, dying of cancer, and found out that my ex-husband had just sexually abused my oldest daughter. So I had no choice but to turn my life around. And I didn't do anything major other than divorce him. But it was all these little tweaks and changes every day, just making sure I'm taking care of me. I'm choosing my words wise. Like all of these tiny, tiny, seemingly insignificant things are the huge life-changing things over time. So I really believe that and try to tell my kids. They're like, well, you need to go viral, Mom. And I'm like, I don't want to go viral. I want this journey to be as fun as the creative process was. And I know I'll get there eventually. And I will have had way more fun this way. So
what I love talking to you, Trish, and hearing about your books and what you're writing is you exemplify the term that words matter.
they really
And
do.
what you're doing and what you're putting out there into the world to help families and kids and parents, you are building this foundation for people to build something on. And that can be not quite as glamorous as a viral video on TikTok,
Yeah.
but you're building something that's got some length and longevity to it, which is what I like.
Yeah.
Is people can build on this foundation. And that's what I get a sense from you is that's where you're finding more satisfaction than being
Definitely.
famous for a short time.
I'm a firm believer that how you get it is how you lose it. So I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to acquire it, like feeling good about myself and doing the right thing and hopefully inspiring people along the way. And that means it's going to be real hard for anyone to take it away from me. So that's kind of how I'm approaching this, though. I mean, I wouldn't mind going viral and have all the money and all the success. And I am not pushing that away, and at this point, even if I did go viral, that would be years and years and years and years of hard work,
Right.
Showing up, doing all the things, that's the part that kids, it was like, we didn't see it before, but now we see it even less because people are getting famous in these bizarre ways and they don't know how to handle it. And it's not glamorous and it's not pretty. And I don't want that for my kids. I want them to know that there's beauty in the journey to get there.
Yeah. And building on a solid foundation, if fame or a notoriety comes, you have something to build off of and you have a message to carry people through.
Truth.
So you're not just bringing people into the room and then they're all looking at each other like, why are we here?
Yeah.
I don't know. You have something to tell people and show people and demonstrate, which I love. Book 4 then that we talked about as well is something more for you, would you say, than the other 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Book 4 is very meaningful for me. And I have read it a couple of times to people and I still can't get through it without like choking up and tearing up. Like it is my battle cry to all women to love themselves, take care of themselves, and get out of situations that don't serve them. I spent a really long time in a very unhealthy relationship. I thought I was doing the right thing. People told me to leave. I didn't. I thought that you were supposed to stick it out. You have no idea the power of just being a happy mom. That is the most important thing to your kids, whether you're married, divorced, single family, whatever your family ends up looking like. You as a mom being in a strong place, being the best version of you is the most powerful thing you can do for your kids, period. End of story. So however you can get there, do it. And if there are people in your way, bye. That's it.
Right. Because that home that you're creating through your the demonstration of who you are as a parent. I think that your kids obviously are sponges. They're going to pick up from what you say, how you say it, but also how you live. And
Yeah.
that again becomes part of their foundation for their life and what they're going to take with them after they leave us, right? And move on to the next step. So
And they notice congruency. They know when what you're saying doesn't match what you're doing,
right.
which is why my first book didn't hit home. Now it hits home for a lot of people because there's proof in the pudding. Like, I'm not just saying this, I've lived it, and I know that this is true. And I will keep moving in this way for as long as I am permitted to do so.
So Trish, tell us the timeline for your newest release. What's kind of in the works, and when can we expect it?
So the Sorry Monster, as I said, that one's I'm going to be releasing a Kickstarter hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Because my daughter designed the Sorry Monster, we wanted to do like a plush and like version of it for her. And so we're in the design phase with that. And so once that's sorted and we have that sample in hand, we'll do the Kickstarter and people can order the book, the plushie if they want. The other books will be available there. So that's coming. Where are we now? We're April.
Yeah.
Maybe early May.
Okay.
And then the final of the 4 books that have already been written, I'm hoping to have that one illustrated and published with a Kickstarter coming out probably October so that it's in hands for Christmas.
Nice. Talk a little bit about the struggle of finding an illustrator. What is something you're looking for in an illustrator? Kind of give us some direction about finding somebody.
Yeah, I know I have this very specific look for this final book because it is a children's book, same thing, written in rhyme, same lighthearted feeling. But this one, and I can't tell if I'm making this more difficult on myself or what it is that's getting in the way, but I've hired 2 illustrators and both of them have just kind of been like, I don't have time. It's the weirdest thing. Lovely people, both of them, but it just kind of after a while, like they were missing deadlines and I was like, you sure you have time for this? And they're like, no, not really. And I'm like, okay. I want it to be really beautiful. I just want it to be beautiful. There's a book that I fell in love with, Zen Shorts, and it's really beautifully illustrated. And I totally bought it because of the cover. I had no idea what was inside. I just bought it because it was beautiful. And it ended up being like a life-saving book for me during my first cancer diagnosis. So I want to create a book that will attract someone in the same way. Like they won't know that it's going to be what they need, but because it drew them in that way. So, but I haven't quite found someone who has the style. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to, and it's entirely possible that I'm supposed to illustrate it and I'm resisting that. I am an artist, but I'm not an illustrator. And I recognize that. But I seem to be getting pushed in that direction. So I don't know. Someone needs to come and save me from having to illustrate this myself. It'll never get done that way.
Yeah. So is there a correlation? Is there a thread through all 4 books that kind of ties them all together?
Self-love.
Self-love. Okay.
Self-love. You got to take care of yourself first. That's the only person you can take care of, really. Other people will push you away. Other people resist you. Take care of you first. And then everything else sorts itself out.
I love it. I love it. So for somebody that comes to your website, they go to their online purchasing site to buy the books, what's the message to them before they add it to the cart? What would you like to say to somebody who finds your website and is thinking about buying your book? What would you like to say to them before they push add to cart?
Just push add cart.
Just do it. Yeah, there you go.
Just get it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't just say anything because if you're connecting with it, that you're meant to connect with it. And it will, like, it's just a book, but I'm telling you, the things you do and say on repeat become this basis in your life that you may not even realize. And so I can feel really good that that becomes their basis. I think that would be awesome to have young kids be taught that they put themselves first. There's nothing wrong with that. selfish isn't a bad thing when done properly. Like all of these very simple truths that are written in rhyme and that you can kind of just toss them around in your head. Maybe they'll get stuck. It's sending a really good message to your soul. And I think the world needs that.
Definitely. We need that. And I like the fact that we can have that on repeat as well. It's amazing. So Trish, take us through the website again. Where do people go to find you and connect with you? And where are you most active, like online outside of your website?
So my website's www.trishmichael.com. There's a lot going on there. I was a photographer for a long time, so I still have people hiring me for that. I also do small business consulting. I also do sidewalk chalk art randomly. Just did a piece the other day. It had been a really long time. I write the books. I also pole dance. So there's a lot going on in all of my social. I am Trish Michael is my handle on Instagram. And Facebook, I don't remember. Yeah. It's something with my name. I'm trying to keep it simple. And I really have quite a personal approach to what I post. Like I post my life. I post what I'm eating. I know, boring, but I have a specific diet because of the whole cancer thing. So I have some people following me for vegan food and other things like that. So it's an eclectic mix. Don't come expecting anything specific.
I love it. And Trish, maybe one thing else to add. Somebody's listening to our podcast. They follow you. They read your books. They're happy to hear your voice on this episode. A message to your followers, your readers, people who are part of your community listening today. What would you like to say directly to them?
It's the last line in Find Your Happy. And I don't even know if I'll be able to say it without crying because it is kind of like the line that, it just means a lot. And one last thing that I learned that is great. It's always the right time and it's never too late.
I love it. What a great way to end the episode. Thank you, Trish, for making time to be on the show and to share this amazing journey of writing these books to not only help you navigate life, and your family, but to help others as well. That's it's one thing to take something personal and share with the world. And I'm just I'm thrilled to have you on and to help share the message of what you're writing. And
Thank you so much.
Continue to wish you well and your family well. And looking forward to seeing book number 3 and 4 hit the world and see the response, because we're eagerly awaiting this. So thank you for writing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The power of words, everyone. Your words matter. And it's one thing I learned just listening and being with Trish is you have a message and your story can help someone. And Trish is a great example of that. Thank you for being part of the podcast.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for being here on Living the Next Chapter. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We enjoyed having you here on the podcast. Our authors are amazing. I hope you appreciate their time, their effort to make this possible. If you know an author, if you want to recommend an author, that's a good idea. Hey, if there's an author that you really would love to hear about or hear from, if you tell me, if you send me a message, you speak pipe on our website, livingthenextchapter.com, send me an email, go over to livingthenextchapter.com, send us a message. We will forward your message to that author and say, listen, you are being requested to be on Living the Next Chapter. Our audience can't wait to hear from you. You can help shape the show. Yeah, you. You could do that right now, actually. You got a minute, right? Okay, how about you do that? livingthenextchapter.com. I'll see you over there. Recommend an author. Yeah. See you. Thanks.